Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Coming up on the First Take podcast, is this the year CP3 takes the Clippers to the NBA Finals? Plus, can the Pacers help Roy Hibbert find his game before it's too late? And actor-comedian David Alan Grier talks NBA playoffs and the Donald Sterling controversy. All that and more coming up right now on the First Take podcast. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Take. I'm Carrie Champion in studio with Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith. Good morning.
What's going on?
How are you?
What's up, man?
How about these playoffs? They go from wild finishes to shocking outcomes.
Shocking is probably appropriate. But before we get to that, let's talk about what's coming up on the show today. He is an actor. He is a comedian. He's a Renaissance man. We're talking about David Alan Grier. You may remember him from In Living Color. You remember that, right, David Alan Grier?
Of course I do.
He's also a Laker fan. That's a bonus. So we'll talk about Lakers and other things when he comes on the show today. He joins us on the desk. Plus, topic at hand. Yes. Clippers. Warriors. That was a good series. Now what happens to Mark Jackson? Stephen A. will give us some insight on that. But back to the top story. Clippers dominated the Thunder. It wasn't even a competition, actually. Chris Paul was absolutely amazing. 12 of 14 from the field. He was 8 of 9 from 3. 32 of the Clippers' 122 points. Let's listen.
He's great. You know, he's just very, very smart. And he sometimes gets in a way with that, you know, because he's thinking so much. But today I thought he was in a great place. He played free without thought, but when we needed him to, he did it. I thought his intuition today was phenomenal. He knew we needed a good start, and he got one for us. That's just why he's who he is.
Chris, 8 of 9 3-point shooting. Is that ranked near the best shooting in your life?
That's what I do. That is a lie. I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those nights. I promise you, it's got to be a career high for makes and attempts. But I don't know. This one will definitely go down in the history books for me. Don't count on it for game 2. I'll tell you that.
Being funny there. How impressed, Skip Bayless, were you with CP3?
Mr. Smith, obviously, I had to be extremely impressed with CP3 last night because that was obviously the greatest game of his 9-year playoff career. And obviously, he was the reason that the visiting Clippers blew out OKC in OKC. I didn't see that coming. I don't know if you did. I didn't see it at all.
Not a beat down like that.
Okay. But I must say, for Chris Paul, this was something of an ambush. Because I seriously doubt that Oklahoma City looked at its scouting reports and thought, gee, we've got to concentrate on stopping Chris Paul from shooting three-point shots. During the regular season, he made 36.8% of his threes, which ranked 64th in the NBA. He attempted per game during the regular season 3.4 per game. And last night, he goes 8 for his first 8. I mean, OKC was just shell-shocked because it just couldn't happen. He goes 6 for 6 in the first half alone. He goes 12 out of 14 for the game from the field and only played 3 quarters. Nobody saw that coming. I must admit, as a step-back perspective, what I loved the most about Chris Paul last night was he was the best floor general on the floor, and that he had 10 assists and controlled the game from tip-off through 3 quarters. So I'm back to my original point. Maybe it's time now for Chris Paul to take the next step to become a superstar instead of just a star. Because, as we all know, and if I have to bring it up again, at least Chris Paul now needs to try to get out of the second round for the first time in his 9-year career. This is only his 3rd visit in 9 years to just the second round. And last night was his first second-round playoff win as a Clipper. Think about that. The first game he's ever won in the second round as an L.A. Clipper was last night in Oklahoma City in a huge upset that nobody saw coming. So maybe he's ready to continue this, though I thought that last night from three-point range was just an aberration.
Last night's performance from three-point range was an aberration. His ability to excel is no aberration. I have repeated, and I'm going to regurgitate my comments from last week and the week before when you so disrespectfully labeled him CP0 as
you mean honestly?
Championship rings.
Thank you. Wait, does he have a championship? Help me.
Excuse
Did
me.
I forget?
I'm sorry. I let you speak.
Is
it your strategy to interrupt while I'm talking?
Yes.
Just to knock down what I'm trying to say? Because I said
to
CP0.
make sure that you say it correctly.
How can you make sure of it?
You can't lie to the American people.
Oh, no, you do that every day.
Oh.
The point that I'm trying to make to you is that when I reiterated your comments about CP0, I specifically said the 0 qualifies as no championships, which is what you were saying.
Well, I want to make sure that the people understand he doesn't have a championship. Am I right?
Well, everybody understands that.
Well, some people might be in the dark about this.
Why would they say that? By the way, y'all gonna let this segment go over since Skip interrupted me for the last minute. The point that I'm trying to make to you is...
I'm just trying to talk 50-50
60, well, we appreciate that. If you didn't pour so much and ask me questions, maybe you get more time. But the point that I'm trying to make to you is that CP0 showed up. And if you remember what I have said repeatedly to you, Skip Bayless, what I have said was CP3 is a superstar point guard. I didn't say superstar as in superstar Kevin Durant, superstar LeBron James, superstar Kobe Bryant. I said superstar point guard because there's something to be said about being a floor general. Despite his 8 3-pointers last night, what was everybody raving about? It was great to get that kind of performance from, quote, unquote, our leader. Okay, because we usually goes where he takes us, because he's the one that sets the tone. When you were in Game 6 in Golden State, when I was there, CP3, Doc Rivers looked exasperated. Why? Because CP3 was pounding the ball too much. He wasn't moving the basketball the way he's accustomed to doing. He was dribbling the ball entirely too much. He wasn't facilitating movement, spreading the floor, running the offense. This is what he's elite at. If you look throughout history, the great point guards didn't win championships by themselves. You had to surround them with people, and they were the ones who were the floor generals. The Michael Jordans came along, and they taught you that everybody doesn't need a point guard. If you have a Michael, if you have a Kobe or somebody like that, you don't necessarily need a great point guard to win, a LeBron James. Those guys change everything. Dwayne Wade in 2006. Those guys change everything. But if devoid of that kind of talent, you need a point guard and a big man in order to win for you. And when you look at CP3, there's no question. He's the quintessential point guard in this game. Now let's get down to brass tacks here. The Los Angeles Clippers look better than the Oklahoma City Thunder. And to me, just like CP3 was the MVP of last night's game, the biggest GOAT for last night's game was twofold: Russell Westbrook and Scott Brooks. How many times is Kevin Durant going to simply use his forearm to hold somebody off, to demand the ball, and then all of a sudden he's engaging in one-on-one or one-on-two or something like that? That's not going to work. You need Scott Brooks. Scott Brooks has got, I can't stand saying it because I like him so much, but he has got to be a bit more innovative offensively as a coach. And Russell Westbrook, I can't believe I'm about to say this, he just got waxed last night.
Yeah, he did.
He just got waxed last night. Because let me tell you something. He walked away, and Charles Barkley, I want to give Charles Barkley all the credit in the world for this one point, when he said, you can't retaliate by just trying to outscore somebody.
Right.
Chris Paul gets the better of you, so you want to go out there and you want to attack, which is why Westbrook had 5 turnovers, which goes to your point.
6 total.
I'm talking 6 total, but 5 in the first half. What I'm saying is, which goes to your point about how, excuse me, he's make one great play, and then all of a sudden he'll make a mistake. And that's exactly what Russell Westbrook was doing. Why? Because Chris Paul was giving it to him. And what happened was he wanted to immediately retaliate and be competitive. The reason why I brought up Charles Barkley is because Charles Barkley was making the point. You can't always attack offense with offense. You really want to accept the challenge. Shut down Chris Paul. Now, obviously, he's running around, pick screens and things of that nature, but you don't have a problem stopping anybody else, Russell Westbrook. Why'd you have a problem last night? To the point where it's a team huddle and you walking away and going on the bench to collect your thoughts and to be all alone. It's a rare moment because Russell Westbrook is big time. But it's one of those rare moments where you just simply got your butt waxed. And that's what happened last night. He got waxed. Chris Paul just gave it to him. And so now we're going to find out what OKC is worth, because remember, I picked OKC because I'm assuming the games are going to be tight. DeAndre Jordan's going to be sent to the free throw line. What did he shoot from the free throw line last night? 1 of 8. This is a problem.
You don't know.
But you know what?
Oh,
but you know what? It doesn't matter, because if the game ain't close, then you don't have to worry about him getting to the free throw line, because the game ain't close. I didn't expect this. Oklahoma City is going to have to be a bit more creative, because clearly Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant just jacking up perimeter shots or trying to go one-on-one, Skip, ain't going to get it done.
Okay, I hear you. How many times have we talked about this? I accept who they are and who they are not. I'm not sure Scott Brooks coaches at all. He's got 2 of the best offensive players in the game, maybe the 2 best total, you know, obviously as a tandem.
Because Russell Westbrook is unstoppable.
He's unstoppable. So what do they do night after night? What do they get away with? Your turn, my turn. Your turn, my turn. There's no symmetry to it. They don't seem to run any plays. They just play. They say, our 2 guys will be better than your 5 guys. That's how they play. And last night they got outmaneuvered by Chris Paul, who made his first 8 3-point shots. The longer I watch basketball, you know what hits me harder and harder? The impact of the 3-point shot, especially on a playoff game. It's devastating. It's psychologically devastating, and it rocks the scoreboard. It's like the scoreboard's jarred by the 3-point shot. And when one guy makes 8, it's hard to overcome it. So, again, can he keep this up? Remember, Oklahoma City won the boards 47-31. That's like Miami Heat. That's how they do it.
But you know why I feel the way that I feel, Skip? The guy had 5 of the 3-pointers in the first quarter, I believe. What I'm saying to you is you still got 3 quarters to go. For the rest of the game, Chris Paul hit 3 3-pointers. For the rest of the game.
But it was pretty out of control.
It was pretty out of control because they got demoralized. And I'm not going to go.
They're down 14 after a quarter.
I'm not going to go that far. Listen, we've seen teams overcome bigger deficits than that in the first quarter. The point that I'm trying to make to you is that I'm not going to sit there and dismiss what you're saying. I can't go as far as to disrespect Scott Brooks like that and say I'm not sure he coaches at all, because the man has accomplished a lot being the head coach for Oklahoma City. But I'm looking at this team right now. My Lord, you just can't give the ball to Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and say, just take me there against this Clippers team and against that coach in Doc Rivers. He's too good of a coach. They're too good of a team to do that. If they don't get their act together, Oklahoma City's going to get bounced out of this series, and the Clippers going to go to the Western Conference Finals.
Last quick point. I got to give Bruce Bowen, our Bruce Bowen, some props, because he picked the Clippers yesterday for this reason alone. One team has a point guard, the other team does not. Okay, well, that's a huge point. Now, is that going to last through 5, 6, 7 games?
Listen, he may be right, because if Russell Westbrook's got to do 2 things, Skip. He's got to defend, which is not hard for him to do, because he always does. He got schooled. But I'm saying he's got to defend. But he cannot turn the ball over like this. He can't do it.
Remember, one team's coached by Doc Rivers and the other by Scott Brooks. Maybe that played last night. Maybe they just weren't ready for the strategy that Chris Paul and company adopted right out of the gate.
Game 1 in Eastern Conference, Wizards at Pacers. Wizards win their first conference semifinals game since April of 1982, folks. That's more than 3 decades. That win came against the Celtics way back in the day. Now, they beat the team that many thought would challenge the Heat for a conference title. But listen, we don't know what's going on. The Pacers are of the past. Roy Hibbert has disappeared.
We're still with him. You know, we're still with him through this process. You know, he's going to find a way through. You know, we need him now. But, you know, I have faith that, you know, along the way he's going to find himself. But, again, we're at a point where, you know, we're really going to need Roy, and we really need him now.
We're just going to keep encouraging him. And, again, he's got to be a part of the fight. And he's got to be a part of this thing for us to go anywhere.
All right, so the invisible man is what they're calling him. Stephen A. Smith, can you even explain what happened to Hibbert?
No. I've been covering the NBA for 18 years, Skip. I have never seen something like this. I didn't even see it from Kwame Brown. This is some epic futility that is taking place before our very eyes. And I'm a fan of Roy Hibbert, the person. His defensive prowess couldn't be ignored all of these years at 7'2", the way he performed so admirably against the Miami Heat last year. never in my wildest dreams did I believe I would see this. And to put things in its proper perspective, understand that he has been scoreless in 3 of the last 4 games. In 2 of the last 5 games, all playoff games. Not only has he been scoreless, but he hasn't had any rebounds either. I'm going to repeat this. He's 7'2". How are you 7'2" and you have no rebounds and no points in a playoff game? I don't understand what the hell is going on. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen it. And this is clearly psychological. If you look at his body language, he's defeated before he even steps on the court. He doesn't have any confidence about him. He seems incredibly distracted. And who I want to applaud is David West, because just look at him. I mean, I've known David West for a long time. Just look at him. Look at his face. You know he said something to Roy Hibbert. You know, I mean, there were reports that put him into the back room, him and Rasul Butler. But you know, I mean, because David West is biting his tongue.
Sure.
There's much, much, much more he could say. He's not going to throw his teammate under the bus like that. But he's down there battling. I don't know if y'all have seen Nene. That's a big boy.
Right.
Hey.
Martin Gortat.
He's a bigger boy. We're talking 6'11", 250 right there.
And we're talking massive. I mean, he's got that old man strength. You understand what I'm saying? This is a big man, right? You've got Martin Gortat down there. He's not a punk. He's not small. He's not soft. This dude can bang. You're David West. You down low with them. And it's bad enough you're not getting help, but you're not getting help from your 7'2" center? That's a problem.
Right.
That's a problem. Now, I don't know what's going on. I really think that, you know, they talk about the sports psychologist. And somebody got to talk to this brother. I don't understand it, because Roy Hibbert is better than this. I don't care what anybody wants to say. He's a bit slow and methodical offensively. He's limited in terms of his offensive repertoire. All of those things are true. Those are things that you can grow as your career continues to progress. But he was always formidable defensively. He was always a presence rebounding-wise. And so the combination of those two things, if nothing else, you can hang your hat on, which elevated Indiana's defense. Now he's a liability on defense. And it's not just because they're pulling him away. Because in fairness to Roy Hibbert, if you remember at the beginning of the season, one of the things that he articulated last year during the playoffs and at the beginning of the season this year when he and I spoke, he talked about how being pulled, his biggest fear was a Chris Bosh type. Being pulled away from the basket, you can launch perimeter shots against him. Skip, it don't matter now. Guys are driving in for layups. Guys are posting up, scoring on him. I've never seen anything like it. This is bad on an epic level. I don't know what to say.
I'm going to try. This will be my theory, my 2 cents on this one. Now, Chris Broussard again brought up on Mike and Mike earlier today that there are rumors of conflict between players in the locker room. I don't know anything about it. Chris said he doesn't know for sure. But if that's operating, then that's a whole nother ballgame.
Chris said what? I'm sorry?
That there's conflict between players off court.
There's no question that's true.
Okay.
There's no question that's true.
So if that's what's operating at the highest level here, then all bets are off.
That has happened. But that was months ago. They should have been handled by now.
All right. Let's assume it basically got handled. Remember, Roy Hibbert at Georgetown was a late bloomer. He stayed all 4 years. He was barely learning in his senior year. And remember, they got bounced out of the NCAAs by Steph Curry and Davidson. Remember this?
Yes.
And it was a huge upset, and it was pinned a little bit on Roy because he didn't really come to play the way he should have that day. He should have had a big advantage over a little tiny Davidson team, and Steph pulled it off. So then he doesn't go until 17th overall in the first round. And he goes to, remember, Toronto drafted him, and then Larry Bird basically traded Jermaine O'Neal for Roy Hibbert and said, I can turn him into a project center for me. And Larry did. Well, I thought he worked miracles with it.
He did a good job.
Okay. But remember, Roy's NBA confidence was built on sand instead of bedrock to me.
Okay.
This is a very sensitive man. We've had him on the show a couple times. He's deep. He's very well spoken and learned, and always comes to our show with deep thoughts. But they're sensitive thoughts, maybe over-emotional, maybe the criticism stings him and it wrecks his confidence much quicker than it would wreck most guys' confidence. And it has been destroyed on the biggest national stage. Once they became, thanks in part to you, you're doing your ESPN interview with them, they got launched onto the top of the stage early in the year. And I think Roy crumbled ultimately under the pressure. Once his game started to go south, what did he have to stand on? Well, this is all new to him. So he's never been a great rebounder because as smart as he is off the floor, he never had a high basketball IQ, so he's not a position rebounder. And people are always running around him getting offensive rebounds. So he's never been great, but he did average, 12 points and 8 rebounds a year ago. So this is shocking, but I think his confidence is wrecked.
When I interviewed them, they were performing very, very well for the first 60 games of the year. They didn't crumble because of the spotlight being placed on them.
He did.
Something happened.
Yeah.
Something happened off the court with him and his teammates, and it has affected him because of what you said, him being sensitive or whatever. It's had a profound impact on him, and they're going to have to help get him together, and David West is going to have to get on him because David West is the most balanced of the crew. He's the senior, he's the oldest, he's married, he's got the foundation,
I don't think he needs criticism.
Stuff.
I think he needs positive reinforcement.
I'm just saying, but you got to get in his face and challenge him too. This ain't the time. This ain't the time.
Stephen A. reiterated that Roy Hibbert has been scoreless 3 of his last 4 games in the postseason. Interesting. 2 days and counting. The draft begins on May 8th. Mel Kiper will be a part of our in-depth coverage on ESPN. Mel, thank you for joining us. Let's talk about the latest news surrounding prospects. That's Zach Mettenberger. According to ESPN sources and multiple reports, the former LSU quarterback produced a diluted urine sample. That type of sample considered a failed drug test in the NFL. So we want to know how that will affect his stock, Mel.
Well, Carrie, it's obviously they have their explanation for it if you read that, and obviously he's not a first-round pick in my opinion. He's probably going to be a second- or third-round pick. I actually grade him out as more of a 4th- or 5th-round pick. So I'm not as high on Zach Mettenberger as some are, but the speculation exists that maybe second round, when you talk to some teams, that's a possibility. Those teams have passed on that quarterback in round 1. So I don't think it will have a dramatic impact at all on where he goes. He's not a first-round pick, and they have an explanation as to why that happened.
Interesting, Mel. Let's talk Rams. 2nd overall pick, rumors flying. As you know, Mel, I grew up an Oklahoma fan. I watched every snap that Sam Bradford took for OU, albeit on television. And as you know, Mel, I was never sold on Sam before his draft on his durability or his big game pocket toughness. So if, in fact, Johnny Manziel is still there at number 2, which we assume he will be, what are the odds that the Rams would take Johnny Manziel?
I'd say 25%, Skip, and I say it because Bradford has that 1 year to really show what he can do, and they may move forward with him, they may not, depending upon his performance this season. You think about the offensive line, getting a number 1 receiver, getting a safety. They have a lot of pieces in place. Like Les Snead and Jeff Fisher have done a great job really taking the picks from the RG3 trade and making them count, getting guys who can compete and win jobs and do a great job producing results at the pro level. Do you want to bring Johnny Manziel into this mix with Bradford and have to try to trade him? Your offensive line's still going to be an issue. So to me, and of course they pick at 13, but you can't get 3 players at 13. You only get 1. So to me, if you take Manziel, your team's not going to be better next year. And this is a team that has a lot of good young players. I think surround Bradford for 1 season with as much talent as you can. See what he has. Draft a quarterback 3rd to 5th round. Then think about next year. But I would be very surprised if Manziel's a St. Louis Ram.
Well, Mel, I got to ask you this. I'm a bit concerned about what you're saying because obviously with the quarterback position being the most important, you take a chance. You give Sam Bradford 1 more year to find out whether or not he's that guy and pass up on these quarterbacks. I mean, how deep is the draft going to be next year and beyond, considering the fact that you may need a quarterback right now? Who's to say that they're going to ever have this shot again?
Well, a couple things, Stephen A. First of all, Sam Bradford, I wasn't as high on him as some were coming out. You know about that whole year and what went on in terms of my evaluations. But I think you look at where they are as an organization. He's shown flashes where he's been out there in some games and looked like he could be the guy. Other games he fell back. Obviously, the injuries at Oklahoma and at St. Louis are concerns. That's why the offensive line is such a big deal here. It's not like Sam Bradford is a below average, mediocre quarterback that you got to kick to the curb. That's not the case. And I think when you look at this year with the pieces they have, and if they add a couple offensive linemen and a receiver and a safety, they're not that far away if Bradford's the guy. And he showed glimpses of that during his career. You've seen elements of that. You've seen indications that he could be the guy. Give him one season, see if he is. He was a #1 overall pick, and a lot of people thought he should have been the #1 overall pick. And as I said, he hasn't been a bust. He hasn't been a major disappointment. He's just had an injury last year. So at the end of the day, to take Johnny Manziel, who people around the league are 50-50 on, and let Sam Bradford go away and then try to start over with a quarterback behind that offensive line, I don't think that's a recipe for success.
Okay, Mel, let's drop 2 more notches to #4, Cleveland Browns. We're hearing that Jimmy Haslam, the owner, is in love with Johnny Manziel. We have heard on the record Kyle Shanahan glowing praise about Johnny Manziel. Is this real talk or smokescreen, says Mel?
I think Cleveland, I think St. Louis is trying to entice teams to move up, saying all these glowing things about Johnny Manziel, bringing him in, doing a lot of work with Manziel. Everything's great, great, great. Trying to say, okay, if you want Manziel, come to 2. If Cleveland moves up to 2 and St. Louis moves to 4, they still get Greg Robinson or Jake Matthews or Taylor Lewan, whoever they like at that point. So they get the tackle, and they pick up extra choices. This team's accumulated a lot of picks already. So for Cleveland, if they're at 4 and he falls in their lap, with the energy and the enthusiasm he would provide this organization, Joe Hayden's already said, hey, love to have Manziel. He could be the missing link in a division with those 3 quarterbacks that are pretty doggone good. Roethlisberger's got Super Bowl rings. Flacco's got a ring. Dalton's been to the playoffs 3 successive years, and you're distant 4th at quarterback. You got Johnny Manziel with the big hand in Cleveland. That's not going to be an issue. The weather, it wasn't an issue for Bernie Kosar or Brian Sipes. So I said all along, Jacksonville or Cleveland, you need energy, you need enthusiasm. Who better to provide that than Johnny Football?
Mel Kiper, the way you're sounding is as if it's a foregone conclusion that the second a quarterback is chosen, it'll be Johnny Manziel. Is he indeed the first quarterback that's going to be chosen, or is it Bortles? Is it Bridgewater? Or is this a smokescreen everybody's throwing out there to disguise who they're going to get? What's the deal?
Stephen A., I'll say this. In talking to teams yesterday, Johnny Manziel is the consensus. He's the first quarterback off the board. I don't think there's any question about that right now. Blake Bortles, if he doesn't go 8th to Minnesota, gets down to that 20 spot to Arizona. Do they take Bortles or Carr? Do they even take a quarterback over a pass rusher? Cleveland will already have Manziel picking at 26. They will take a corner or a receiver or a running back. Then you get into, will teams trade back into the late first and take a Derek Carr or a Blake Bortles if he gets past there, whoever Arizona ends up taking? That means only 2 quarterbacks up to 20 are off the board. Either Carr or Bortles are still there. Bridgewater's still there. Garoppolo, McCarron, Savage, the list goes on and on, are quarterbacks that will still be available in the second round. So I think 2 quarterbacks in the first, maybe 3, depending upon how this all shakes down.
So, Mel, sum this up for us. Step back and tell us, after you've been doing this so many years, how does the pre-draft intrigue stack up with all the mini drafts you've covered?
Skip, it's an all-time high because we had these extra 2 weeks and all the quarterback talk, the Johnny Manziel talk. Think about it. Manziel, probably the most discussed player in the history of the draft.
Yep.
Jadeveon Clowney, probably one of the best defensive ends in 25 years. Yep. Khalil Mack from the University of Buffalo maybe goes ahead of him. Are you kidding me? And all these teams need quarterbacks. They may pass on Manziel. They may pass on Bortles. Tremendously intriguing draft.
Can't wait.
So, Mac, what shot, Mel, what shot do you think Khalil Mack has of being picked ahead of Jadeveon Clowney?
I would be really surprised, not shocked, because I had Mack going #1 into my mock #3 at that point for a valid reason. He's a scheme fit. Clowney had some negativity. I figured, okay, scheme fit, take Mack. He's right there in terms of being the #3 overall pick, #5 overall pick. Why not at #1? But when you really broke down Clowney, he's so good. And you have to deal with Andrew Luck. You got J.J. Watt. To take Khalil Mack, and he was quiet in some games, which bothered me when you really went back and studied Mack. Loved the Ohio State game, but there were some games where he should have dominated. He didn't. He's still raw, limited football background in high school. Now you're talking about taking him over Clowney from the SEC, the best defensive end in 25 years. I said this morning on Mike and Mike, if you do this, it's like taking, it wouldn't be, oh, they took a player that's ranked 15th on the board. Mack's a good player. It would be like taking RG3 over Andrew Luck. Some thought that should have happened. A lot didn't. I didn't. What? But there were arguments about RG3 over Luck. Now there are arguments about Mack over Clowney. Similar situation at different positions.
Milk hypey again, I'm sure, within the coming days. We appreciate you for joining us, my friend.
Kerry, Skip, Stephen A., always a pleasure. You guys
All right,
take care.
Well, summer has started for the Golden State Warriors, and perhaps the search for a new coach has begun as well. There are reports that Mark Jackson's job is not safe. He has acknowledged that the front office has not spoken with him about his future. Meanwhile, the players are standing behind him, most notably Steph Curry. Listen to what he had to say. What Coach has gone through this year has been unlike anything I've seen. Just the amount of the distractions, the circus that has been around him, and the decisions he's had to make. I love Coach more than anybody. For him to be in a position where his job is under scrutiny and under questions is totally unfair, it would definitely be a shock to me if anything like a firing would happen. I'm definitely going to voice my support for Coach to anybody that asks me all summer. On his job, Mark Jackson has said he's not necessarily worried about his coaching career. Stephen A. Smith, shed some light on this. What's going on?
Let me be very clear and preface my comments by saying I want to thank the Warriors organization. I was there Thursday night for game, for Game 6. Actually had an opportunity to meet with Joe LaCobe and several of the other owners, and the hospitality was exceptional, and I deeply appreciate it. And their enthusiasm for this organization, their fan base, and the future of the Warriors is to be admired. Let me also say, for the record, people want to look at me and whatever I have to say about Mark Jackson is always tainted with the fact that, you know what, we're friends. Let me say for the record, I'm proud. If somebody wants to consider me a friend of Mark Jackson, I'm proud of that because I happen to think that he's a great person. He worked here at ESPN ABC for years, and I'm friends with a lot of people. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, I have a good relationship with Jeff Van Gundy, all right? So when I sit here and speak on his behalf, is it going to be because I like him? The chances are probably not. It would have something to do with his coaching career with the Knicks and then with the Houston Rockets. So people can dismiss whatever they want to dismiss, but let me give it to you straight. I'm going to tell you exactly what I said to a lot of people in Golden State, and I'm not going to reveal who and all of this other stuff because I'm not going to violate the level of trust people placed in me. But I will tell you what I stated to folks as opposed to what they told me. They'd be insane to get rid of Mark Jackson. And it's not just because Steph Curry stepped up and spoke for him. Finally. And he's obviously the future of that franchise locked in for the next 3 years. It's not just because Jermaine O'Neal and Draymond Green and all of these boys have spoken up for Mark Jackson. It would happen to be because the man won 47 games last year, because he won 50 games this past season, and because this team, devoid of a big man presence, because Andrew Bogut continuously resembled Andrew Bogus, okay, as in somebody who is a complete no-show when the time arrives for you to show up. Despite all of this stuff, this man has produced an impressive winning resume for the Golden State Warriors, who, by the way, hadn't had, the back-to-back winning seasons in 22 years that they had over the last 2 with Mark Jackson. Now, here's the problem that Mark Jackson has. Mark Jackson marches to Mark Jackson's beat. He is not a puppet for anyone. He wasn't a puppet here at ESPN ABC. He wasn't a puppet when he was in the NBA all of those years, whether it be Indiana, New York, the Clippers, or wherever else he played. He's never been a puppet a day in his life, and he ain't going to start now. Now, does that mean he's insubordinate? No. Does it mean that he's cantankerous and just ignores people? No, it does not. What it means is that he's a man. Okay? And as a result of that, you're going to have to come to him with salient points that make sense in order for him to co-sign with what you want. Now, you've got a situation in Golden State where something, and it needs to be said here on national television because I find it reprehensible that this is even a subject. You have some folks in Golden State who believe that, you know what, the head coach has to do a better job of ingratiating himself with other folks that you work with, particularly assistant coaches, which brings us to 2 individuals. You got one dude named Brian Scalabrine, and I'll get to him in a second. And then you got this other dude, Ermin.
Wait, how much time do we have?
I'm sorry, I'm almost finished.
The show's almost over.
Listen,
Okay.
and you got this other guy, Ermin.
Okay.
In all seriousness, Skip, Scalabrine is a subordinate
I agree.
that walked by folks for 5-6 weeks without even saying hello. And felt like video coordinators and other people didn't even deserve to be talked to. Okay? You got another dude in Ermin, with the story just came out a few days ago, The dude was secretly taping conversations, and somehow, some way, he ends up with a job in Boston under Danny Ainge.
What does that tell you?
You know what? It tells me something real shady is going on. But I've never seen anything like that, Skip. So you can have an assistant coach who's secretly taping conversations. You can have another dude who's insubordinate, flagrantly so, and the problem is with the head coach.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't get that. I don't understand it. So in the end, Mark Jackson needs to listen to the wishes of ownership, all right, whatever their wishes may be. Make sure that you ingratiate yourself, sort of upgrade. You don't have to get rid of your assistant coaches, but in my estimation, upgrade. Make sure you supplement to help the Lindsey Hunters, the Ron Meyer, and you know, all of these guys, and just help them out. You understand? But you continue to keep Mark Jackson on board. You keep him on board, and you damn sure make sure that you don't sit there and hold his future up and dangling in the wind because of an assistant coach who was insubordinate and another dude who was secretly taping conversations. You don't do that.
Nope.
That's where I'm at.
Okay, to me, from a distance, this situation is more inexplicable than what's happened to Roy Hibbert. That Mark Jackson is, quote unquote, on the hot, he's not just on the hot seat, it's on fire. He's days away, we keep reading, from being fired, because already candidates, we're going to talk about one candidate in just a moment, but lots of candidates are in the wind, man. They're being thrown out. Stan Van Gundy, Fred Hoiberg, Steve Kerr. We got all kinds of candidates, which means where there's lots of smoke, there's fire on the hot seat, right? Okay, so I step back and I say, from a basketball standpoint, X's and O's standpoint, what did Mark Jackson do wrong except continue to win more games? If you could show me, if you could demonstrate that they were all offense and no defense, I'd say, well, maybe somebody has a point. They improved to 3rd overall in the NBA in defensive efficiency this year. 3rd overall. Okay, we know they can score, but what's the problem? I don't know. I don't know how much input Jerry West as an advisor is having into this decision. Did somehow Mark rub him the wrong way? I have no idea what's going on. But it sounds like it's a viper pit, man, because if one of the assistants, who is fairly highly regarded around the league, because he immediately got a job and went back to Danny Ainge, if he is secretly taping by leaving his phone on the desk in the coach's office, private conversations, something is wrong.
Usually, you wouldn't get another job.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but somebody is, like Danny Ainge is saying, I'm on this guy, I'm on Darren Erman's side here, okay? Okay, so big picture, when I step back from this, I just wonder, I'm just going to bounce this back at you. Did those owners invite the great Stephen A. Smith to that game to interact with them because they wanted to try to soften the blow with you?
Not at all.
Well, think about it.
I'm going to tell you why.
You're in a powerful position, and you're a friend of Mark Jackson.
I'm going to tell you why. I would never disrespect Golden State's ownership like that. The only reason that happened, in fairness to them, it was months ago. I mean, months ago that they invited me. And it was only because they were watching First Take, and I was raving about the home crowd and how I had never seen it. I would never accuse them like that.
It would actually be a shrewd move on their part, because maybe.
Yeah, but it was me. I was supposed to be out there 6 months ago.
They invited you a while ago.
I couldn't get out there. That has nothing to do with it. In fairness to them, all I'm saying to you is that in the end, what it comes down to is this: you're supposed to be measured by whether you win and lose basketball games and if your team is moving in a forward direction. If you look at the Golden State Warriors, Andrew Bogut, I mean, go back and watch the tapes. I've seen this with my own 2 eyes. I haven't heard this from Lindsey or Mark or anybody. I watched the games. I've seen the Golden State Warriors in the bonus, and all of a sudden, Andrew Bogut, who was running up and down the court looking just as healthy as Lord knows what, 2 seconds later when the pressure mounted, grabbing his hamstring. The list just goes on.
Maybe he just didn't want to shoot the free throw.
I'm telling you right now. That's right.
I mean,
that's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly
DeAndre Jordan.
No. DeAndre Jordan shows up in the game. He might show up and miss at the free throw line, but he shows up. This dude, Bogut, why do you think? You got to remember, I'm not calling Andrew Bogut Andrew Bogus from his days in Golden State. Go back to the tape. I've been calling him that since his days in Milwaukee.
He was the first overall pick in the draft.
This dude, let me tell you something. He can play a little bit, Skip. He can certainly defend.
They missed him in the series.
But he's called behind his back. He is called the Tin Man for a reason.
I get it.
No heart. None. And that's the problem. And he's locked in for the next 3 years? I mean, come on now. If you're Golden State, give me a post presence for Mark Jackson to have, and then talk to me about their style of play and how certain things need to be modified. If you're devoid of a big man presence, what are you supposed to do? And don't get me started with those candidates. When are we talking about Steve Kerr, by the way? We going to talk about that?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Oh, I got
we're getting there.
Okay, so quick
ahead.
bottom line, it sounds like Mark Jackson's issue in Golden State is he's not playing politics. Is that right? Where he's rubbing people the wrong way. You
know what? That's the impression I've gotten.
Okay. I
didn't get that from ownership, but that's the impression I've gotten from people who have talked to ownership.
Okay.
Under Mark Jackson, Golden State has won 50 games in the regular season for the very first time since 1993-94. Play politics, my friend. According to media reports, Steve Kerr is expected to make his decision on his future with the New York Knicks as their head coach in a few days. Sigh. But in the meantime, we're hearing his name. It's in the mix for head coaching positions such as the Los Angeles Lakers as well as the Golden State Warriors. Stephen A., what do you make of this?
I don't like it. And Skip Bayless, please allow me to apologize beforehand to Steve Kerr on national television, because in no way are these comments generated towards him specifically. It's just that he's the guy in this position. So because he's the subject at hand, it speaks to a bigger issue. But in no way am I trying to question his abilities as a coach. I'm trying to bring into question his job as an executive for the Phoenix Suns from 2007 to 2010. If he ends up getting the Knicks job, more power to him. I wish him luck. We all know I'm a diehard Knicks fan, and I'll be rooting for him because I'm going to always be rooting for the Knicks. And I mean none of what I'm about to say towards him personally, even towards Phil Jackson personally. It's not about that. But I'm incredibly uncomfortable with what I'm seeing transpire. You know, back in 2008 or so, when Mike D'Antoni got the job with the New York Knicks, Mark Jackson was a candidate for that job. He wasn't a candidate for anything else. Before that, Avery Johnson was coach of the year, won 66 games, went to an NBA Finals, all right? It was like pulling teeth for him to ultimately get the Nets job. Mike Woodson didn't have a good year this year, but the year before won 54 games. He'll be lucky to get another head coaching job. Jeff Hornacek, God bless him, did a fantastic job, all right, and he got the Phoenix Suns job. I guess what I'm saying is, I understand that it's not applicable in every case, but forgive me, I need help, America. What the hell did Steve Kerr do to become some golden boy? From what I'm being told in my circles, in the peeps that I rap to, covering the NBA for the last 18 years, Steve Kerr is not just a likely choice for the Knicks job. He could possibly get the Lakers job if he really, really wanted it bad enough. And if he wanted Golden State, they might fire Mark Jackson by lunchtime to give it to him. I'm going to ask that question again. What the hell does Steve Kerr do to be a coaching candidate in two of the largest markets in the United States of America? And oh, by the way, San Francisco, the Oakland Bay area, ain't shabby. It's one of the top 5 markets in America. I don't get it. I'm lost. I don't understand it. You never coached a day in your life. Ever. You wasn't a head coach in college, wasn't a head coach on the pro level, and you're a golden boy? I'm sorry, we're going to sit here and get uncomfortable. That's what we're going to have to do. Y'all know of any black candidate that happened for? I said it. Black, yes. Doc Rivers. You got the job in Orlando. Grant Hill is hurt. He was supposed to come there healthy. Him and T-Mac were supposed to do some things. It didn't happen. They couldn't kick Doc Rivers out of town quick enough. I mean, damn it, they might have pulled him off the golf course if he wasn't on the sideline, for crying out loud. He gets a job in Boston before Kevin McHale, all right, gave a gift as the executive of the Minnesota Timberwolves, looked out for his boy Danny Ainge, and gave a gift to Boston by shipping KG there, all right? Doc Rivers was on his way out of there, despite the inept job that Danny Ainge was doing. And it wasn't until Doc Rivers ultimately was given the tools with KG, with Paul Pierce, with Ray Allen, and delivered by winning a championship, was he all of a sudden elevated.
Okay.
But prior to that, he couldn't get that. But here we have a guy in Steve Kerr who I profoundly respect, does a fantastic job on television, did a good job as an executive for the Phoenix Suns, will probably do a good job with the New York Knicks, and I have no aversion to that. My challenge, the reason why this is a subject to me is I don't understand for the life of me. It's one thing for you to have to be a candidate for a coaching job. But to be considered the golden boy, where everybody's willing to knock down doors just to bring you in, what resume do you have that says that you should be a leading candidate for New York, L.A., and the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area? There is something that is incredibly wrong with that. And it needs to be said. And damn it, I'm tired of the fact that it hasn't been said until today. I have heard nobody bring that up. Nobody on any network anywhere. What has he done to be a prime-time coaching candidate? I don't get it. I'm lost, and I'm sorry about that, Steve Kerr. I'd say it about anybody else that was in this position. I don't mean to target him.
It's not his fault.
It's not his fault.
Right.
It's not his fault.
Are you saying that the NBA needs a Rooney Rule like the NFL has?
I'm not going to go that far because there's plenty of African Americans, there are plenty of black folks that have been head coaches in the NBA. I think they're the last league that needs the Rooney Rule, but I do think it speaks in a very uncomfortable way that Steve Kerr is this golden boy with no coaching resume to speak of. That's a problem because that don't happen for black folks.
Okay, just on balance, because you mentioned several. We've had issues in college football where a black head coach couldn't get a second job. But you mentioned several. Mike Woodson did get a second job. Doc got a second job. Larry Drew got a second job. I could probably go on. So it's not like it's one and done, right? Okay, just for the record. Just, and obviously, without going into the detail, the NBA has a much higher percentage of black head coaches than the NFL does.
Okay,
just on balance. You know how much I'm with you about Steve Kerr's resume. He has no resume. I don't think he'll make a great head coach. We've talked about this because he was an executive. He doesn't seem to have the edge to be an NBA head coach. He's a very, very nice guy. Probably too nice a guy.
And a very smart basketball man.
Okay, but remember, how did his name first surface as a coaching candidate? Phil Jackson. Why would Phil Jackson tab Steve Kerr? What would he see in Steve Kerr? And I'm overstating the case, but it's puppet. Here's a guy who learned under me, a guy I coached, who believes in everything I believe in. He is Big Chief Triangle. We know that because Jeff Van Gundy once called him that once upon a time. And so here's Steve Kerr, who worships at the altar of Phil Jackson and the Triangle. What better way, if you want an extension of yourself on the bench, if you're not going to coach yourself, the closest thing to having your surrogate coach, your substitute coach, would be Steve Kerr, right? Okay, so that started it. And we've seen many, many times where all of a sudden a candidate becomes the hot candidate because he's at the right place at the right time. Wait, Phil Jackson loves him? Well, maybe we should think about him. And all of a sudden there's hiring hysteria about that candidate for no valid reasons, right?
Scared.
Okay.
Let me tell you why. I get where you're coming from, but let me tell you why it doesn't hold water. Because you're talking about, in one case, getting rid of a guy who has already been winning in Golden State in order to do it.
That's incomprehensible.
All right, so you got that one. Number two, you brought up a couple of coaches. Keep in mind that Mike Woodson won his last 4 years in Atlanta, improved every single year. Last 3 years was in the playoffs, won 53 or 54 games those last year in Atlanta before they let him go, okay, because he lost to LeBron James in the playoffs. So keep that in mind.
But he got a job.
Wait a minute. How did he get that job? The Knicks didn't hire him as a head coach. What happened was he came there as an assistant under Mike D'Antoni, where he was the defensive specialist, and because they fired D'Antoni, he was the interim, and he ultimately went 18-6 and then ultimately got that job. What I'm saying to you is that if you look at black coaches on the NBA level, the fact of the matter is they have to go through far, far, far too much just to get a job, just to get a interview. And don't bring me Larry Drew because he went from Atlanta to Milwaukee. Y'all act like that's a plus. Other than a paycheck, what's the upside?
Okay,
they were abominable.
He got a job.
I'm just saying.
Just for the record.
A job. Well, we know he got a job, if that's what you want to classify.
Well, it's one of 30 great jobs to me.
Yeah, I understand that. But I'm just saying to you, so the point is this. He got a job. Steve Kerr, New York, The Knicks, the Lakers, or possibly the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, arguably the greatest shooting backcourt in history. Excuse me?
Okay, now, for the record, Jason Kidd stepped right out of his sneakers into a head coaching job. Why was that? He's a great player. He's a cinch lock Hall of Famer. Do I have a problem? I don't have any problem with that, okay?
And I don't have a problem with Steve Kerr getting the Knicks job. I'm talking about the three candidates.
Okay, just remember, for the record, Kevin McHale once upon a time named himself head coach in Minnesota and is still a head coach, obviously, in Houston. Did he have any resume? He had no background. Did Magic Johnson once try to coach the Lakers out of nowhere with no resume? He said, I'm going to try it, and he failed miserably. Did Larry Bird coach the Pacers? All of a sudden, he says, do I have any background? He had zero background.
So we're going to put Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Steve Kerr in the same sentence? That's number one. And number two, what did I say? If Steve Kerr is up here as a candidate for the Knicks coaching job, I have nothing to say. My issue is Knicks, Lakers, and Golden State. What have you done? What have you done? What black person do you know is getting that kind of opportunity? Well, you a golden boy candidate for three of the potentially marquee coaching jobs in all of the NBA? Come on now.
Okay, is he at the top of the list for the Lakers? Because I don't know that.
I don't know.
Okay.
He's just in the mix.
If you know something about Golden State, if they would snap their fingers tomorrow and say, we'll take Steve Kerr, then that's a legit issue on your part. Because I don't understand why. How could you take Steve Kerr over Mark Jackson? I mean,
I don't get it.
Come on.
ESPN Radio.
With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The Miami Heat have won the 2013 NBA title.
Major League Baseball.
The Boston Red Sox have won the World Series.
The Bowl Championship Series.
The tide has risen again. The third time in 4 years.
You're home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
Hey, the day's almost over. You gonna make it to the gym? Give me a little pre-evaluation feedback?
Nope. Just make sure the dodgeballs are inflated and nobody's bleeding. You'll do just fine.
Well, I mean, physical education is more than that. And, you know, I've been petitioning to get raises for the coaches so that we can do a lot.
The kids love gym, but let's not overstate its value. You're kind of like a glorified recess supervisor, except recess supervisors make more money.
Well, I know. That's why I'm fighting.
Joel, I failed one class in my life. That was gym, because I couldn't climb a dumb rope. But who cares? I still went to Stanford, still have my dream job, and my student loans. But in 6 years, I will be free and clear of the interest. The point is this. Gym is the least of my concerns. Now keep up the good work.
Very funny. David Alan Grier in his new series, Bad Teacher, airs Thursday nights on CBS. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome a Tony-nominated actor, a comedian, a Renaissance man, three times.
You forgot the Grammy.
Oh, okay. Let me make sure I get it right. Ladies and gentlemen, David Alan Grier. Dak, thanks for being here.
How are you? First of all, I want to tell you guys, I watch you every day.
Okay.
Love this show. Love this show.
Thank you so much.
It's my neighbor over here.
Neighbor. You want to give us a secret?
I didn't find any. You know, me and Ernestine are very close. And we used to
I thought too close for my
Yeah, he just texted me about it.
I'm like, what's going on here?
It's all good.
Because you saw her more than I did.
It's all good. Well, you're working hard.
You have to bring him that money.
You've done a lot of great work, but for me, just for comedic purposes, in living color and on Martin, you know, I could.
Yes, sir.
Hilarious.
Wait a minute.
I know.
Do you remember we were at the Red Rooster in the
right.
basement? I'm with a very close friend of mine. I look over. There's Stephen. Stephen A. Smith. You were like a journalist in the corner. He wasn't saying nothing. Looking like a hawk, just watching me.
Well, he's very quiet when he's very quiet when he's out.
I wasn't watching you. I just lay low, man.
I was like, what's up?
I move in the dark.
She asked me. She's like, who was that? I was like, that's Stephen A. Smith. It was wonderful.
Gangsters move in silence. That's what he does. It's silent. All right, let's talk about this. From my understanding, you're a huge LeBron fan. Is that correct?
I love LeBron James. I want to see him. He's the best player. I love OKC.
Okay.
You know, I want to see those guys.
You didn't love them last night. You didn't love them last night.
Well, you know, what happened last night happened last night.
Let's talk about today. Because we're talking about LeBron, the Nets, the Heat. You know, they swept them. Nets swept them in the regular season. Let's talk about post. Who wins the series?
I would hope and I expect Miami to win. But if you look at history, it says here, only 4 times in NBA history has a team that was swept during the regular season have they gone on to defeat that team in postseason play. So That's what the statistics say, but I expect Miami to win. I hope so.
Okay.
You know, I mean, they have been laying back. There's been all this drama, you know, all these amazing first-round games. Miami handled their business, and they've been healing up, rubbing salve on, you know, Dwayne's knees and all that old stuff. So
Worst thing that could have happened to the Nets is that you went 7 games with Toronto because of the rest it allowed Miami to have. Now, you may end up beating Miami tonight due to the rust alone. That's possible, but...
Are you predicting?
No, I'm not predicting, but I'm just saying that in the end, the fact that Miami's able to get that rest and to heal up is not a good thing.
And you know, the Nets are fine. I don't have a passion for that team, and I can't tell you why. I just don't have an emotional connection. The Warriors, I love that. The Clippers, I will never root for the Clippers. I don't care if they save the president. I ain't rooting for them. I'm a Laker fan.
Excuse me.
Boom. It may take 10 or 20 years.
Yes.
But I'm a Laker fan.
And I'm right there with you. Never will I.
You understand that the Lakers, things have changed.
Things have changed.
It's a new team in L.A., you understand?
Well, it's going to be long. It may be years.
It may be.
It may be years.
We're going to enjoy the ride.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to
Jim, what did Jim Boss say? He said, if I don't get this together in 2 or 3 or 4, I may 5 years.
He said 3 to 4 years.
Or 5.
Yeah.
I might step down. That's not definitive.
Why don't y'all do something? Why don't y'all rally together and put something together to get rid of Jim Buss? That's really the problem. You do know that.
Well, if, you know, compared to what's happening with the Clippers, he's cool.
Okay.
Jim Buss is cool. See, they sitting back going, that's not us. So, you know, I don't know what. They own the team. We can't get rid of him. We just got to wait.
Did we have to wait it out?
So are you saying you like LeBron more than you like Kobe then?
I love Kobe, but I have a lot of thoughts about Kobe. I love Kobe. Met him several times. We hung out. You know, I did the Kobe commercials. But
you were the voice of the puppet Kobe, right?
But I was also courtside when they were battling Detroit. Shaquille O'Neal fought his way into the paint. He's holding off 5, 6, 7, 8 players, half the bench. He calls for the ball. Kobe shakes him off, throws up a brick, and they walk off the court. And in that moment, I said, they're not going to win this. They're not going to win this championship. So in my mind, Kobe would have passed Michael Jordan a long time ago had he played with Shaquille O'Neal. So, yeah, he's wise now because he's old. But he was young and dumb, too. Okay, he made a lot of mistakes as a young player. That's what young players do.
Now, wait, you were from Detroit, so were you rooting for the Pistons in that series?
I don't root for the Pistons, and I'm going to tell you why. The Pistons don't play in Detroit City. The last time I went to a Pistons game, man, I had to take a passport. I think I was in a different country. It took 2 hours. I didn't know they weren't even speaking English over there. Nope. So, but to be serious for a moment, Detroit needs that team. The city needs that team. You know, the Lions play there. They have a beautiful stadium. The Tigers play there. So whoever owns the Pistons, they need to move them there. So when they do that, I'll start rooting for them. But that's why I don't root for Detroit. I love the city.
You talked about Kobe being young and dumb. Do you remember, and Stephen A. talks about this, how the players did not like Kobe when he first got to L.A.? He was, I mean, it was back and forth. And to watch him transition to who he is right now, you know, you didn't necessarily answer. Is he better than LeBron, in your opinion?
Not now. LeBron's
in their
29.
prime.
LeBron is a different type of player. I remember the first time I heard about LeBron, and I felt sorry for him. I said, he's 18, all this pressure. He'll never live up to it. It's just, you know, we wish him well. But to watch him blossom physically, he and Kobe are different players. They are just genetically different. To watch LeBron, it's like he was made in a laboratory. So they're not the same kind of player. I mean, a lot of sports, you just have to wait and see. Kobe's legacy is pretty much set. LeBron's still building his. So ask me in 3 or 4 years, you know, what he's accomplished in the next 3 or 4 years. What's going to happen after Miami? What if they don't win this year? Where's he going to go?
Can I take this somewhere, guys?
What's up?
One of the things when you talk about the comparisons, and I totally agree with you, your analogy there. The one thing that I will say, Skip, to you that I've never said on this show before, when you look at LeBron and how he's evolving, I think it's a legitimate question. But before the championships, I would say there's no reason for it. But it's not just because of the rings. What happened is that LeBron was always a freak of nature, and LeBron could always do what he could do. But somehow, some way, those guys that he joked around with, played with, faking as if they were taking pictures with one another and all of this, having a good time, they didn't show up when it counted. All right? So you looked at what LeBron was lacking at that particular juncture as a leader. Coming to Miami, playing with Dwayne Wade, not only did he benefit from the presence of Dwayne Wade, but he learned from him. And now he ultimately took over and it elevated him. When you look at Kobe wasn't that kind of dude where he was the rah-rah kind of guy, but because of his habits and his commitment to greatness, okay, you couldn't slack but so much around him. The only dude that could get away with it was Shaq, and I don't mean Shaq was a slacker, because he certainly wasn't. He just loved Big Macs too much. He just loved Big Macs a little bit too much. But outside of that, Shaq was the most dominant force since Wilt Chamberlain. But no one else could slack because Kobe wasn't having it. You know, he'd go up to you, look, we got a job to do. And that level of accountability, I think when guys are coming into the game, you need to run into somebody like Kobe.
But hold on, Kobe was what, 18 when he came?
I'm saying he was 18, but even all of those years, he was
How were you at 18?
Excuse me?
How were you at 18? Were you a leader? Were you a man? No, you were a kid.
No, but what I'm talking about is his habits. The
yes,
fact that
he's a hard worker.
He didn't want to party. He wanted to study film. He wanted to be great. And so you couldn't be around him if you didn't care. You couldn't be around him.
Dwight
That's
Howard.
what I'm saying.
Dwight Howard. We saw what happened there. But I mean, just one last thing on LeBron. I mean, the hatred of LeBron that was happening with I don't understand. He's never been arrested. He's a wonderful leader for the NBA. He should be. This is a dude we all been waiting for. So why hate him? I mean,
nobody's
handling it.
But I must say, I cannot yet put LeBron in the same sentence with Kobe Bryant because Kobe still has that assassin streak in him that I have yet to see from LeBron. Maybe I will see it. I'm not sure you can learn it later in your career, but I'm talking about that killer mental toughness that Kobe had from the start. Now, it could manifest itself in being a selfish gunner occasionally, like you were talking about. Like he's way more. LeBron can pass the basketball with anybody, so he's got that over Kobe. But that assassin.
We're going to come back from this. I once said that LeBron would be on the Mount Rushmore. The only reason that I didn't put Kobe is because when I think about Kobe, I think about MJ because they were similar. So I'm thinking about it's one or the other. Like the both of them together. Of course, Kobe deserves it more because he's got more rings and he's accomplished more and he's proven more. But when I look at Kobe, his game is more of a replica of Michael Jordan. Whereas LeBron is different. You know, the Magic's different. Bill Russell or somebody's different. You see what I'm saying?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to First Take. David Alan Grier still here. David, you grew up in the 60s, and it would be safe to say that your family is engaged in politics. Your father, a retired psychiatrist who wrote a book about black life called Black Rage. Your mom's a teacher. You also have a memoir, a funny, satirical memoir. So I want to talk about your thoughts on the Donald Sterling situation, your take on it.
All right, well, let me tell you, I've never played collegiate or professional sports. Love basketball, love watching it, big fan. But I'm going to tell you right now, this whole Clipper episode, I was talking to my dad and my brother. I call it the weary eventuality of racial topics, of racism coming back. We were not surprised. It was just, really? Again? So what I'm telling you, by the time the league announced what they wanted to do with Donald Sterling, I was worn out, okay? And all I do is watch the game at home as a black man. So I cannot imagine what these players were under. I know that the day that Donald Sterling was banned for life, my dad called my brother hollering and screaming. He said, he was so happy. That was the vibe. And in L.A., it was very tense. Like, I describe it not since the Rodney King trial and around the riot. That's how it felt. So had they, I don't know, banned him for a week, I don't know what was going to happen. I know I wasn't going to that game, and I know it was really hot. Once they got that out the way, now we can move forward. But in terms of the ownership, I think it's going to take a while. It's not going to be a day. Hopefully it's up to the league, the owners, to do their thing now. And hopefully they'll do the right thing. But a lot has to change there. A lot has to change.
You brought up something I think is important to bring this up. When I sit here, each morning, there are a multitude of occasions, whether it be in a week or a month or whatever the case may be, where the subject of race comes up. Skip and I talk about this all the time. And, you know, you can talk about black athletes, you can talk about other athletes, and nobody says anything. The minute you bring up something, and it's pointing the finger at somebody who happens to be white, if you're black, you're called a racist or a race baiter. And what I think people don't realize, and I'm hoping you'll co-sign with me on this, and I believe you will, it is exhausting. We do get tired of talking about it. We do wish we didn't have to. But the fact is, the issue is prevalent because there are too many occasions where the stuff comes up and it would be damn near criminal to ignore it. And that's just what's going on. You really, really think I want to sit up here yet another day talking about Donald Sterling? But how can it be ignored? Let's think about what Donald Sterling had to say, and then think about what I brought up about the subject, not Steve Kerr, but the subject pertaining to Steve Kerr. Because whether it's the coaching or whether it's the players and how they're portrayed, or whether it's Donald Sterling itself, it all points to what the kind of stuff he was alluding to. Yeah, basically, this is how some folks think about us. This is what's really the hidden agenda behind it all. These are the undertones. This is what influences it. This is when, you know, this is where the idea that black folks have to do twice as much to get half as much comes from. This is why you can sit there and you can talk about, well, you know what, it's not slavery anymore, anything like that, but you know what, people hit you in different ways, like economically, when you get paid less than other people, where the opportunities that are accorded to folks don't necessarily get accorded to you, where the excuses behind why that doesn't happen are different for you than they're different for other people. It gets exhausting. The dream for people like myself, and I'm sure for you and others, is for there to come a day where we never have to discuss race because it is fair. But the sadness he was alluding to that I'm embracing is that particularly in the world of sports, it resonates far more than any place else. Do you know why, Skip, Gary, Alan? Because sports is supposed to be the closest thing we have to a meritocracy. It's right out there, front and center for all of us to see. Your record, your performance, it's under the same rules and regulations as it is for everybody else. And when even that is invaded with any kind of ism, it really is sad.
Well, let me ask you something. I mean, I thought about this a lot. Do I think Donald Sterling is the only owner, present owner, who thinks and says that? No, I don't. I think there are other people who do. But he's the one who got caught out there. And culturally and racially, this was the perfect storm. When you have a workforce that's 80–90% African American, the fan base hugely black. I talked to a friend of mine. He said, well, why should they kick him out because of his beliefs? You know, why are all these other owners going to endorse this ban? I said, they don't have to. But now you go have a meeting with your 80–90% black workforce and explain yourself. Now, we started talking about it and laughing, but every day around that time, every place I went, people, strangers, what do you think, David? What do you think? This is the thing that's wearying to me. What do I think? I want to get your thoughts. Do you have any jokes? I mean, all this kind of stuff. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, it's tired.
Tired of it. And go ahead.
Okay, so you played Jackie Robinson in a play called The First, got nominated for a Tony. Then you played in a very powerful David Mamet play that I saw on Broadway called Race. And your father obviously was very invested in this cause. So step back and try to put in perspective for me racial progress in America or lack thereof to this point in time.
I can put it in a nutshell. You know, I was with my daughter, and she was a little baby, and I was watching TV, and the pundits on there were talking about Barack Obama, who is running for president. It was during the primaries, and it was in that moment that they said, run this by me again. All right, this is breaking news. From this moment forward, Barack Obama could theoretically win this nomination. So for me, in that moment, before that, I supported him, but I didn't really believe it.
Right.
I said, he's going to make a run,
right,
but then everything's going to go back to normal. This is not the time. Well, my daughter was in my lap, Skip, and I burst into tears. Because for me, as a black man, this is when it became a reality. You know, and I looked at my daughter, and I said, it's changed from here forward. Because, you know, when my daughter, who's biracial, she looks at me, of course we have a black president. Why wouldn't we? Because that's what she knows, you know. So her world is different from this. Of course it's come. I mean, to have an African-American president, you know, we're talking about race, about this issue publicly. That's healing. That's good. To sweep it under the rug, to ignore it, to make excuses, that's bad. So it's painful. It's wearying. But these conversations are necessary, and we are better as a society for it. That's how far we've come. You know, the banality of a black president, that's what I revel in. Now he's just the president.
Wow.
Okay, so that's beautiful.
And not just that. I think one of the things that a lot of folks in white America need to really, really embrace and inhale is that when the negativity is touched on, a lot of times as black folks, we're speaking systemically or on a particular issue. We're not looking at white folks and saying, oh, all of y'all are that way. No. We've grown beyond that. Most black folks in this day and age look at everybody like God-fearing, decent, respectable human beings. We don't sit there and look at, oh, you're white, so you hate us. No, we don't think like that. Simple. We're talking about a select few people. The problem is when they screech and you hear them. You understand that they're not alone, so you appreciate the fact that they've exposed themselves and potentially the very few who think like them. But what a lot of other white folks need to recognize is to stop inhaling it as if black folks are alluding to all of you. That is not true. We don't think we've graduated from that perspective because America as a society has graduated from that point. They just need to accept that we know that.
You need to have Baron Davis on. I feel because Baron Davis like, I'm trying to tell you. I tried to tell you.
He tried.
For 10 years, I tried to tell you. Every time I ran down court.
That's right.
You know, it was crazy, man.
It's crazy. David Alan Grier, very eloquent words on the president. You supported him, but you didn't really believe it until that moment. I think a lot
Not
of
that moment. From then on, it was
relate.
on and popping. My mother was like, I'm voting for Hillary. I was like, Mom, what?
You doing
From
what?
there, now she said, I never said that.
She was voting for Hillary because she didn't think it was real.
Exactly.
I understand that sentiment. Ladies and gentlemen, it is official. Kevin Durant has earned his very first Most Valuable Player award after leading the Thunder to a 4th consecutive division title and the 2nd best record in the league. He received 119 first-place votes. Behind him, number 2, LeBron James with 6 first-place votes. And then there was Blake Griffin pulling up the rear, 3rd. Here's the question. Now that we have this information, and we talked about OKC obviously getting blown out last night by the Clippers, Stephen A. Smith, how much more pressure does this put on KD to perform?
I think it puts pressure on him to perform. I think it raises, it elevates a little bit simply because he's gifted enough, and his team is gifted enough to go very, very far in these playoffs. When you looked at Allen Iverson and he won the award, you looked at the parts around him offensively, and it was all on Allen Iverson, and you knew this. And he was 6 feet, 165 pounds, soaking wet, so he was just, a miniature dynamo going up against Goliaths, and ultimately ran into the ultimate one, Shaquille O'Neal, before losing in the NBA Finals. But it propelled the Sixers to at least a trip to the Finals. In Kevin Durant's case, you're 6'10", you got a wingspan at 7'6", you can pull up from 30. You average, 32, 7, and 5. I mean, you look at his numbers, the dude is surreal, he's big time. And the hazard that comes with that is that there's really nothing else to say about him other than you don't have a ring. Because he has 4 scoring titles. He's got a lethal offensive arsenal. He's now a league MVP. He's one of the top 2 greatest players in the world. What else is there to say other than you don't have a ring? There's nothing else to say. But I will say this. The pressure is not just on him. It's on Scott Brooks. Because now it's about, okay, you have 2 of the top 10 players two of the top 10 offensive players in the world in Durant and Westbrook.
Maybe top 5.
That's right. So if you have that, what are you going to do with it, Coach Brooks?
Yeah.
You got to figure out something. So it's not all on Durant. It's on Scott Brooks, too. But the pressure clearly doesn't dissipate where Durant is concerned.
I mean, listen, I think one of the things Kevin Durant can do is he has got to be a killer, like what you said with Kobe. He's got to demand that I am the captain. I am the leader. I'm the go-to guy on this team. And he's got to get Russell Westbrook on board, because if not, I think they can win games. I don't think they can win a championship together. Because statistically, if Westbrook shoots over a certain percentage, they're going to lose. Doesn't matter how many points he gets, they're going to lose. And I don't, as an observer, I don't feel Westbrook is really on board. I think you have two leaders, and they're both trying to hit that finish line together. And in terms of a team, that's not what they need to win a championship. That's what I think.
We have often debated who is the man in Oklahoma City. Who is that alpha dog? Who is the leader of that team? For a long time, I thought it was Durant.
Yeah.
Lately, I thought it's more Westbrook. He plays with such rage. You've talked about it. He's got a little Kobe in him. He does not care what anyone else thinks, including Kevin Durant. He's going to shoot it when he feels like shooting it, and a lot of times it's going to go in. A lot of times he's going to turn it over. We talked earlier in the show. 6 turnovers, 5 in the first half last night. That contributed to the downfall, and it was a mighty downfall. Back to this question. I think Kevin Durant's in a tough spot tomorrow night because just on the coaching level, remember what happened to Greg Popovich? He had to take the Coach of the Year, accept the award before Game 2 against, remember, in the Dallas at home, first round. And again, he doesn't play, obviously, but he was very uncomfortable with it. It was very awkward. They're all out there on the court, and commissioners, they're presenting, and all of a sudden the team's like, ooh, this doesn't feel right. They got blown off the floor. This is just about Kevin now. Will he feel a little added pressure to live up in the wake of the Mr. Unreliable headline that ran, obviously last week?
Well, I think y'all are missing another point too. There's some pressure on Westbrook. Here's why.
I don't think he feels it, but go ahead.
Let me say this. Scored 29 points last night.
Yep.
Meant absolutely nothing. You know what meant something? His 6 turnovers, 5 in the first half, and the fact that Chris Paul schooled him. I mean, just schooled him. I mean, that may be the most humbling experience I've seen Westbrook endure, because we came into the game last night talking about the Chris Paul-Russell Westbrook matchup, and Chris Paul knew people like myself, you, and everybody else was questioning with his hamstring injury. What was he going to be able to give you against the greatness of Westbrook? And Chris Paul went to shoot around early, was in the arena early, he was ready to go, and stepped out on the court last night and was like, did y'all forget who I am? And showed up to the point where Russell Westbrook bowed his head, walked away from the team huddle, went to the end of the bench looking depressed. When you've got something like that happen to you, this is about Russell Westbrook too, on a night when Kevin Durant is going to be honored with the MVP award, basically validating what we all know is your team. Now you're Russell Westbrook. What you gonna do? You gonna try to steal a show?
Maybe.
Or are you gonna be preoccupied with doing your job so you make sure that Chris Paul does not school you again? Oh, by the way, that would be CP3.
Oh boy.
Can you do that every game? No, not that every game.
CP3 as in 3-point shots, right?
Okay, we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
Now, CP3 schooled him not physically, but mentally.
Okay.
I mean,
that's all part of it as a point guard, Skip.
Okay.
As a point guard, that's all part of it.
Nobody expected them to pick and roll so that Chris could roll to shoot the shots, because he doesn't shoot that many shots.
Skip, it don't matter what they expected. He had 8 of them. Get on him. Defend him. What you gonna do? Stop back and take pictures? I know it's the coach's job, but what I'm saying to you is that, again, Russell Westbrook's response can't be, well, I'm going to run down court and I'm going to jack up a shot. His response has to be, I got to put this boy on lockdown. I can't have it.
It should be that. We'll see.
Was he not going under the picks because they were scared to death of Lob City? Because on the pick and roll, you don't want Blake or DeAndre rolling to the basket for a dunk. So Russell's going to help out in the lane, and all of a sudden he's going under picks. And wait a second, Chris is going to shoot another shot out there?
Yeah, but at the same time, you could have somebody like a Kendrick Perkins.
The next big thing, the next new kid, the next overnight sensation, the next rookie, one to watch, the next Hall of Famer, the next intimidator, the next six-time, the next king. Next. Who's next? Let's find out. Names are made here. The History 300 at Charlotte, Saturday at 2:30 Eastern on ABC.